So I'm going to today talk about lease option. And hi Tanzin, a correlation between lease options and rent to rent. What is the correlation? Is there any correlation between them? Hi Amjad, yes, I'm very well, thank you. Yes, so people especially go to do a course in lease option deal to learn how to do lease options. And I'll repeat myself, anything you're looking to do, or especially if you're just starting out in property, I would say, rent to rent, people I think underestimate how fantastic this fabulous, how fantastic and fabulous this strategy is. People forget, people just think, oh, it's for cash flow. But honestly, you can have so many benefits of this rent to rent strategies. Not just cash flow is nothing really compared to what where I was 4 years ago and where I am today. It's all thanks to rent. And this rent to rent helped me to build my relationship with landlords and agents and all, and also allowed me to then do lease option deals as well. So I have done about 4 lease option deals. I have sourced a big portfolio, 5 HMOs, and they were worth over £1 million. The GDV was, it was over £1 million. I'm sure it was, in fact, more. And I packaged it in such a way that it became like a lease option deal, and I sold it, to someone, to investor. And how did all this happen? Because I was already doing rent to rent with this particular landlord. So these are the things that you can do when you get into rent to rent, because once you have this type of relationship where you have built trust with the landlord, then they can share their problems or any issues or anything like that. You will be the first one they will come to. So always when we are starting this rent to rent, don't think that we're just going to get this cash flow from it. There is so much you can get out of it. The relationship you will build, reputation you're going to build, and that reputation will go much faster than you yourself. It will spread like anything. If you are doing your job really well, you've taken someone's property and you are doing genuinely good job on it, that landlord will tell 10 other people. And if out of those 10 other people, if anyone is in any difficulty, they will reach out to you. So that's one reason why I feel there is a very strong correlation between rent to rent and between lease option. Now, first thing, before I actually go on, because many people may not even know what lease option is. So lease option is when you are taking a property, like you are leasing a car. People, it's very, very normal nowadays, people lease their vehicle. So it's same thing. When you're leasing a property, it could be an HMO or non-HMO even, you're leasing or renting a property on a long-term basis, and you have got option to buy that property. So that's called lease option. So basically you've taken control of that property fully, you've taken charge of that property, and landlord has agreed to give you some time, so you can then maybe in 5 years time, 3 years time, 7 years time, whatever time you've agreed with that landlord, you can then go ahead and buy that property. And why I feel this is this lease option strategy works really well with rent to rent, because if you already taken someone's property and they've trusted you and you've done a great job on it, and if they are really happy with you, then if there is any problem or any issue, or if this landlord is thinking of selling his property which you're already managing, then obviously I'm sure he will come to you first. So this is why I feel that there is a very strong correlation between lease option and between and this rent to rent strategy. I mean, if when it comes to actually renewing your contract, say you've done your 3 years, you can always ask that landlord if he has any plans to sell that property, and you can come to some kind of arrangement where because he's seen you've done a great job, and if he can financially, if he can to, then obviously he will agree, he'll be more likely to agree to give you that of time that you need in order to buy that property. So that is the reason why I feel that a rent to rent and this lease option thing goes really, really well together. Or even after a year, once you know that you've done a good job, and if you find out, or even when you have a chat with this landlord, you can always find out, because you will build that rapport, that connection with them. You can always find out if they have any plans to sell that property, and then you can put something in place, so you can create that lease option agreement between you and the landlord. So if he's selling that property, why not he would sell it to you. So that's why I feel there is a very, very strong correlation. And I mean, I mean, sometimes people especially go to learn how to do lease option, and to those people I would really suggest that do your rent to rent first, and everything else will follow. You don't need to. It's like people go and they learn, for example, they learn sourcing. I still say that do your rent to rent and then do your sourcing, because it's easier. Because if you're doing your rent to rent, you built your connection with the landlord, with the letting agency already. They've seen how you work. They know you are a trustworthy person, and they will bring you deals. They will bring you properties, because now they found a trustworthy person in you. And when they find those deals to you, and if they are outside your area, it's much easier for you to convince that landlord or to convince that agency and start sourcing those deals. And similarly, if somebody is looking to sell that property, and obviously if they have already dealt with you and they know that you are a trustworthy person, then they're definitely going to ask you first, and they will listen to you. And many a time I find that people, they will, it's not so much the price. Okay, it could be that they have a set figure in their mind, but if they like you as a person, they will be more likely to adjust with whatever works best for you. So they'll try their best. They will go extra mile, to work with you. So that's why I feel that lease option and this rent to rent, they go hand in hand. So definitely, for that reason as well, if your end goal is, or if you are looking in future to to do some lease option deals, because people have actually heard about it and they feel what a great strategy this is, that you're actually controlling someone's property and you're not really paying anything upfront for it, then I would say, how would you build that relationship? People start sending these leaflets out and they do marketing. But I personally feel once you are already in rent to rent, you already are in the network of landlords anyway. You already know people who own number of properties, or you will get to know people who have portfolio of properties, and then it just gets much, much easier. I've done deals like that. So it's like last month, this landlord, I know him really well, local landlord. He had number of HMOs. Initially he never even had heard of lease option. Initially he just simply wanted to sell those HMOs to someone. And then when I explained to him how this lease option worked, and I explained the benefit, that by him allowing other party some time, he can still continue to earn that extra rent which he wasn't going to earn if he was going to sell that straight away, sell that portfolio straight away. Then he loved that idea. He loved that he's going to be able to make another 200,000-300,000 pounds in rent, while he's still waiting those property to be sold. So there is, they will listen to you more basically. So because those properties were outside my area, I didn't take them, but I packaged them, and I sold the whole portfolio to someone as a sourcer. So, and how did this happen? Because I was already doing rent to rent, and because I was already doing rent to rent, he found me a trustworthy in me. He thought that I was a trustworthy person. So I actually had keys and I did the viewings and everything, and he was very comfortable with that. So that's why I say there is a strong correlation between doing rent to rent and and this lease option, and even sourcing as well. Guys, if you have any question, have you done any lease options, ask ask any questions, or anything you want to know, Mm, yeah, because I've done about 5 lease option deals now. And another thing, people have this thing about lease options. Sometimes there is a myth about it. People think, oh, when somebody is in financial difficulty, then they will do, this landlord will agree to lease option. Or people sometimes say, every lease option deal is a good deal. That's never the case. That's another myth. You really need to know. You have to have a very solid understanding, and the reason I'm saying it, because I've packaged lease option deals myself. I know exactly how they work because I've got them myself. I know, all the ins and outs of this lease option, strategy. So I know exactly what you need to look for. But then once you have already got this rent to rent going, then you have the liberty. You can ask the type of questions you need to ask this landlord, because normally people will not share their personal information, that easily. But once you've known that person and they know that they worked with you, then it just gets easier for you. So it could be that landlord is in some kind of financial difficulty. He can't keep up with his mortgage payments. It could be that. Or it could be that he's suffering from bad health, or someone in his family has got bad health, and for whatever reason he just wants to um, you know uh, pass on the responsibilities of those properties to someone else. He's no longer bothered about them. So it could be that. It could be due to their bad health. The um actually, that portfolio that I'm talking about, that the reason why this landlord wanted to sell those properties was due to his ill health, bad health. He was going through a difficult time, and money wasn't an issue for him. So that was another thing, that he didn't really had to get all the money out straight away. So you need to have certain scenarios. And I think if you're already doing rent to rent, then definitely you will have a better understanding of that landlord situation, and you can appreciate more, and you can be more empathetic as well. So definitely that could be one scenario. Or it could be that that landlord is migrating. He's moving away from the area, or he's moving out of the country. That could be one reason as well. And then if you're already managing his property, then obviously he's going to come to you first before he goes anywhere else. So, or even if you find out that he's put his property on the market, or he's thinking of selling it, then obviously you can put an offer, you can suggest, and it just works much, much better that way. It could be that he's been a full-time landlord all his life, and he just wants to simply retire. That could be the reason as well why this person wants to sell his property, or would agree on a lease option strategy. Another thing could be that landlord has got loads of properties, but because for whatever reason he's thinking of downsizing his portfolio, but at the same time he doesn't want to get hit by capital gain tax, because if he starts selling all the properties in one go, then all the profit that he will make, because properties have gone up in value, he will be taxed heavily. And to save himself from that situation, he doesn't really want to sell all the properties in one go. And then this will be a good scenario for you to propose lease option agreement or strategy to that person. So definitely, these are some of the scenarios people may not even think about, but I have definitely come across them. It could be that person, because he's struggling financially, or for whatever reason the property is going to get repossessed. And if the property gets repossessed, that means once they get if the property gets repossessed, then they may go, they will go bankrupt. And if it will put a really bad mark on their credit file as well, which is not good. So instead of that, if they give that property to you and you can take care of all the payments and everything, then obviously that will be like a dream situation for that person. um, yeah, that's a great question, Comfy. You're asking, if a property has been put on the market on Rightmove, can you call the agent to ask if landlord will be interested in lease option? That's a very, very good question. Now, Comfy, you're in my group. So, yeah, that's a brilliant question. But what this is where I would say that, by the time you will educate that letting agency about it, because don't expect um, every letting agency will agree to it, or will in fact understand what this lease option thing is, you know and then they try to sell that idea to the landlord. You just don't know how they're going to interpret that, to the landlord. Right. Comfy, I think, because if he's already put that property on the market, I've tried it many times. It doesn't really work. People say, "Oh, go and do it and say this and say that." You need to build relationship, and this is why you're better off looking for properties, doing rent to rent on them, and then offering this, lease option to directly to the landlord. Then you don't have that middle person. You don't have that letting agency or state agent in the middle who can be a hurdle for you. So it's much much easier. You can do it, but I think I'm going to be very very realistic here with you as well, Comfy, because I know 99.9% chances are they're going to say, um, they will say no, or they will not even pass the message on, because they just simply want to sell. They don't want somebody to take it on rent, because this is their job. They're going to get their 2% commission on the sale of that property. So why would they entertain? So by the time you're educating them and you are trying to convince them, it may take time, and then landlord may not have the patience. Plus, that person doesn't really know you personally, and there are so many other complications to it as well. Not complications, but people think that lease option is just like that. It's not, because there are so many questions you need to ask this landlord, to understand his true financial status or situation, or his position. So then, you can decide that whether you are able to help this person and at the same time take a lease option on it. And for that, you really need to have that face to face interaction with the landlord, and which can be very very tricky at times when property is just simply on the market on right move, through a letting agency, or sorry, a state agent, and you're trying to do a lease option. It doesn't work, because I have lived in the real world. So I kind of know, no matter what courses teach us. But when it comes to actually doing lease option, what I find is you need to have that strong bonding with that person, and that person needs to be able to trust you so much that they would share all these personal, these details and information, and the difficulty that they are going through. um, Otherwise it's not really that easy. And not even if it is easy, not every deal will make a good lease option for you guys, so that's another thing. But if you're already doing rent to rent with that landlord, and then that he's going through some kind of difficulty, or he's thinking of selling, or if he's thinking of leaving the country, then obviously you can put your face forward, and you can then offer this thing, and you can explain better, rather than having a middle person in the middle, and trying to explain to this person, and then expecting that person to then explain to the landlord. So it's like Chinese whisper. So by the time he'll get to the landlord, the information he may not even understand. So that's why I find it's hard. um you're very welcome, Comfy. You're very welcome. So yeah, so it's quite hard if you are just simply picking a property from right move, and you're doing it that way. And even I feel that this the strategy that normally get taught in courses, and when you go to different academies, and they teach you, oh, send out these leaflets, we buy houses in cash, or we buy houses cheap. you know uh, it's, if somebody is in difficulty, it's not really, it's really really difficult. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't work at all. Out of 500 leaflets, maybe one person will reply. Then out of that one person, you need to then check, how do you know that that option, that lease option deal is going to be profitable for you as well? Because maybe that landlord has taken so much debt against that property that it's in negative equity, so you need to think about so many things, because not every deal will make a good lease option deal, but it definitely gets easier if you are in a rent to rent a strategy, and then you're doing with this landlord, you're trying, because then you can get you can extract all the information that you really need to work it out and do a proper due diligence on that deal, so that this deal is going to be definitely good. And another thing that people always tend to forget, they look there for their business, but when it comes to lease option deal, what you really need to think about, you need to think about the care. You need to be empathetic towards that person, and you need to understand it fully, that what type of difficulty that person actually is going through. Is it financial difficulty? Is he going through ill health? Is he going through some other kind of problem? And you can do all this when you already build that connection, through rent to rent. So that's why I say, even if you're thinking of getting into sourcing, even if you're thinking of getting into BRR, even if you're thinking of getting into service accommodation, I still say get into rent to rent first, because service accommodation, again, with this COVID looming, still it hasn't gone. There is still possibility of getting another lockdown. We may be going into another lockdown. You never know. Never use rent to rent SA as your first strategy. That's my take on it. Have it as your secondary strategy. But rent to rent HMO, that should be your first entry point, or first entry point or main strategy to start with, because with that strategy you're going to learn so much. The relationship you're going to build with your landlord, with agencies, that will be so useful for you, to whether you start doing sourcing, or even with lease options, or even with even BRR, finding deals or anything like that, because then you are in the right group of people. You are already now mingling with the network of landlords who really you need to network with. So when people say we need to network with other investors, I find it, I might be odd, but I find that it's not really these people that we need to network with. We really need to network with agents. We need to network with landlords. And those are the people who will give us business. Those are the people where we will find properties, we will grow our portfolio, and we will build this connection, this relationship. So definitely, I would say that, you need to get into rent to rent, guys, 100%. And if anybody in my group, I always say, if you guys have any property or any deal that that I see the potential, that um, it has got potential of lease option, then definitely I'll be the first one. It's like one mentee in my group, um, she realized that the landlady, because she lives abroad, she's thinking of selling, and I put that idea, and I said, why don't you consider yourself, that you may be buying, so why don't you put forward? And she said, oh, I never thought about it. Now there is a possibility of having that lease option. And my mentee, she's already built such an amazing relationship with her landlady who lives abroad, that why would she not sell that property to her? Because in fact, she's asking my mentee to do things, like, if so, she's trusting her 100%. She's putting her trust already, and I'm so proud, of of my mentee for that. I'm so proud of Pauline for that. So definitely, this is why I say, if you're already doing rent to rent, then lease option is very easy for you to do. Then you don't have to struggle, because that bonding, that connection, that trust is already there. You already know your landlord, and he knows you very well. So he's tested you, you've tested him, so or her. So it just gets easier. Again, like when it comes, to you renewing your contract, or even after a year, if you want to ask, then you can actually approach and ask them what their long-term goal is. Are they ever looking to sell this property? Then you're happy to buy. And obviously then there are many factors you need to think about, that can be a topic of for a different day. Because lease option itself is quite an in-depth topic. which obviously I've done from A to Z of it. So I kind of know. And plus, you need to think about the exit strategy as well. So definitely, these type of questions to consider and to do in-depth due diligence on every situation, what you're going to do in every way, and how you're going to come out of it, how you're going to buy that property eventually, or whatever your exit strategy going to be. Are you going to find a buyer for it? Are you going to buy it yourself? And how you're going to arrange finance for it? All those things get easier if you are already in rent to rent. 100%. 100%. Right, guys, do you have any questions? I hope you enjoyed today's session. Everybody is quiet. Is it that my my Facebook is working or not working? I can't see any comments here. Right, guys, what I would say, get into rent to rent. That's yes, the moral of the story is, if you want to do anything, get into rent to rent, because rent to rent is, don't ever think that rent to rent is cash flow. People always say, oh, I want to do rent to rent because I want cash flow. No, rent to rent is such an amazing strategy. It will get your foot in the door. It will get your foot in the door, definitely. 100%. I've done five lease option deals now. I've actually packaged deals as well, and I've actually sold lease option deals as well. So, and how I know, how I have that solid understanding, because obviously it's come from my own experience. I've done them and I know exactly what I need to look for. But once I have that type of connection, that type of bonding with the landlords, then it just makes it easy for me. I can ask them all those type of questions which normally they wouldn't like to share. For example, their mortgage arrangements, how they are dealing, if they are in any bother, if they have any arrears, if they have, how much loan they've taken against that property. So there are so many things you need to do before you actually agree on a lease option. It's an amazing thing to have, because you have a control of that property which you're going to buy in future. So the beauty is, if you've taken it initially for rent to rent, I always say, don't go over the top when you're spending money on your lease option, on your rent to rent. But once you know that property is going to be your property eventually, 5 years down the line or 7 years down the line, then you don't mind spending money on it, because you know that whatever money you are investing on that rent to rent deal, on that property, it's going to be your property anyway. So you're adding value to your own property. Then it is a totally different situation. Then you don't mind investing into it. So that's why it just gets easier. If you know that you've taken someone's property and they are in some kind of financial difficulty, and you want to help them out, you want to upgrade their property, then obviously lease option can be the best solution for them, and for this landlord as well. You can take care of their mortgages, you can take care of any debt payments they need to make. So those type of things you can always do. Right, guys, I hope you enjoyed. So moral of the story is, get into, sorry, I've had limited time. I mean, lease option can be a training of its own. A whole topic can be trained. If anybody wants to learn about it, reach out. Or if anybody wants to learn rent to rent, do learn rent to rent, because rent to rent will teach you, it'll not only give you cash flow, it'll teach you sourcing. You'll get into lease options. You will also get into service accommodation, because then you don't mind having service accommodations as well, because if it's your secondary strategy. But definitely don't use it as your main source of income, because if anything goes wrong, if there is a lockdown, you don't want to do that. That's my take, because I made a massive we made a loss in that rent to rent service accommodation. So definitely I would say it's not something. And our saving grace was that we were already doing rent to rent, so we had income coming from other sources of property. We had income coming from our own properties as well. So yeah, so thank you, Comfy, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the session, and I hope everybody else enjoyed the session as well, guys. If you want to learn rent to rent, how to do it properly, if you want hand holding, reach out to me. Yes, I'm happy to help. Okay, so enjoy your evening, and I will see you next week, next Wednesday evening, 7:30. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.